Hi, my name is Michelle, and I'm a librarian with LA County Library. And I just want to welcome you to our live virtual event with Chef Marco Zapien. And Chef Marco today, he's going to show you how to create Chile Verde, salsa. Sorry, let me say that one more time. Create Chile Verde, cilantro, Caesar dressing, and bread pudding. So if you have any questions during our program today, please put them in the chat on the side of your screen and set them to all panelists so that we can get those questions answered for you today. And so without further ado, take it away, Chef Marco.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Chef Marco Zapien. I'm the chef owner of the Salsa Grill restaurant in Pico Rivera. My background, well, this is a family-owned restaurant that's been in my family for 27 years now. A lot of family recipes, but we like to get creative. My background comes mostly from sports and entertainment. I was executive chef at Angel Stadium and Dodger Stadium and worked at different stadiums all over the country for different teams, the New York Yankees, the New York Mets, the Portland Trail Blazers, and all of the local stadiums. I am also corporate chef with Melissa's World Variety Produce that supplies a lot of those stadiums, and I work with executive chefs here locally in the stadiums and some across the country to create new recipes and menu items that they could use for day of game events. But today what we're going to do is some recipes from the restaurant. I'm going to show you how to make a real simple salsa that you could play with. And I think all of you have access to the recipes, but you can play with and adjust, and I'll talk about that a little bit. The Caesar dressing, which is kind of a play on a classic Caesar, but we're going to blend some cilantro into it. And Chile Verde, a classic. We're going to show you how to make that. And then also a bread pudding, which is one of my favorite dessert recipes. So like Michelle said, if you have any questions, feel free to ask any questions at any time. I'd be happy to answer them as I'm moving along. And right now, we're going to get started with the Chile Verde because we're going to be using pork butt, which is the upper portion of the shoulder. And we need to start that cooking because it's got to tenderize a little bit. So we're going to put that in first. And I don't know if any of you are actually following along cooking in the kitchen. But if you are and you have questions about what's going on, feel free to ask. But I'm going to take the pork and I'm just going to turn my burner on here. So I've already got this cubed up and it's cut into like 1-inch squares, but it won't take too long to cook. Now I'm going to cook it here for about 25 minutes or so. And as that tenderizes, then we're going to make the sauce and we'll put the two together and you'll be able to see how that comes out at the end. So I've got some chicken broth here that I'm going to cover the pork with. And then we're going to let that start to cook, okay? All right, so we're going to bring that to a boil. We'll reduce that and let it simmer. And as that starts to tenderize, we will work on the sauce itself. Now remember, as this is cooking, this has the chicken's broth and the flavor of the meat and everything. So this is going to be the base of our sauce with the vegetables after that. So first off, what we're going to make is a salsa. Now this salsa, if you are following along on the recipe, we make everything from scratch at the restaurant. So this is probably one of the only recipes that we use canned product. And the only reason that we do that is because we go through so much of it. We had to create a recipe where we could use canned tomatoes because there's just no possible way for us to cook that many tomatoes. We go through about 75 gallons of this a week. So we created this recipe in order to take care of that. But if you like it more spicy or if you want to change it a little bit, I'm going to use whole peeled tomatoes, okay? And the equivalent, if you're going to use fresh, would probably be about 5 medium-sized tomatoes. I'm going to put that into the blender. Then I've got jalapenos in vinegar, also canned. And I'm going to throw those in. And this has the vinegar as well and some carrots. If you want to use the carrots, you don't have to, but I am. And instead of using like the vinegar will actually be our acid in the salsa instead of using like a lime juice or a lemon juice. And then I've got some oregano, dried oregano. I'm gonna add a little bit of chopped garlic. And then we're gonna blend that till it's smooth. If you wanted to make it spicy, you add some chili. You want to use fresh product. First, you take the tomatoes, like 5 medium-sized tomatoes. And you could just toss them in some olive oil, throw them in the oven, roast them. You could grill them. If you want to use a different chili, if you want to use like some chipotle to give it a little bit of smokiness, you could do that, or some serrano, something like that. And then you could make it as spicy as you want. So if you wanted to add a little bit more jalapeno, you could do that as well. This isn't. This is probably mild heat, I would say. So I'm going to take that, and then what I like to do is leave it a little bit chunky. So I'm going to add the fresh vegetables afterwards. So I've got some chopped cilantro and some fresh diced onion. Then I'm just going to stir that together. We're going to season it with some salt and pepper. And that's it. It's real simple. But like I said, if you wanted to cook the vegetables, you could do that, make it spicier. But it's real simple to make. And this is the salsa that we use for every guest that comes in the restaurant. So as you're seated, you'll get a little more molcajete of this salsa with some of our house-made chips. So serve that for you, see what that looks like. And with the fresh vegetables, of course, it gives it that chunkiness and that freshness into the salsa. So, all right, so that's what that looks like. Very simple. We made that, what, 5-6 minutes? Real simple, right? If you have all that product, the canned product, I mean, it's real simple to make. You could change it up however you want, but it's a really good salsa to make, okay? Now, for the cilantro dressing. So that's our next item that we're going to make. And kind of a play on a classic Caesar. If you're going to make a classic Caesar dressing, you would use egg yolks and olive oil. You whisk that together or emulsify that, and that makes mayonnaise. And then you flavor it with red wine vinegar and Parmesan cheese and lemon juice and Tabasco and Worcestershire sauce and anchovies, all of that stuff, and that makes your dressing. What we're going to do, instead of using the egg yolks and oil to make the mayonnaise, we're just going to use mayonnaise, okay? And then we're going to flavor that. So a lot of people don't like anchovies. I love them, but we're going to substitute that by using a little bit more Worcestershire sauce. So Worcestershire sauce is going to give it that anchovy flavor and make it into that Caesar dressing that we're looking for. Okay, so in this recipe, I've got some milk. A lot of times people will thin out their dressing with just water, especially if they're making it classically with the egg yolks and everything. Just drizzle a little bit of water in it, but I'm going to use milk just because it'll give it that richness and give it a little bit more flavor. If you are making it at home, of course, there is dairy in it, so if you're going to hold it for a while, just be aware that it'll probably churn at the same time that your milk will. So just be aware that eventually it's going to turn, but it's so good you'll eat it all up real quick, so don't worry about it. Okay, so I'm going to take my blender, and I have a little bit of milk. And all of our liquid ingredients. I've got Worcestershire sauce, and this is what's going to give it that Caesar flavor. Some lime juice. Rice vinegar, and I'm using rice vinegar. Classically, you would use red wine vinegar. I'm going to use rice vinegar just because it's kind of a neutral flavor, and I really want to pull that flavor of the cilantro rather than having the flavor of the red wine vinegar. Okay, a little bit of tapatio, give it a little bit of spice, and then I'm going to add some cilantro. We're going to blend that up. Okay. So, some of the Parmesan cheese into the dressing and then leave some to stir into it afterwards. So leave it a little bit chunky so you can really get the flavor of the cheese. So I'm using shredded Parmesan. You could do that, or if you want to use shaved Parmesan, if you want to use the powdered Parmesan, you can. I just like the flavor of this one a little bit better. And I'm going to add some chopped garlic. And then I'll blend it up again. Okay, this is by far our most popular dressing at the restaurant. We go through a ton of this. So we make all of our dressings as well. So you won't find ranch or blue cheese in the restaurant. We make it from scratch. I'm going to stir this pork up a little bit. It's starting to boil. Yes.
All right, so we have a couple questions for you already. So as you're making the dressing, does it matter if you use skim milk versus whole or 2%?
No, and I get that question a lot about lightening up the dressing a little bit. So you could, I'm using 2% actually, and but you could use skim milk. I've been asked about using yogurt. If you wanted to use yogurt, I would probably back out the lemon juice just because of the acidity of the yogurt. So yeah, but you could definitely use a lower fat milk, not a problem.
All right. I also have one other question. So on the recipe or for the salsa, the recipe states 1 TT salt and 1 TT pepper. What does this mean?
Yeah, that means to taste. So if you like it a little bit saltier, you could add a little bit more salt. And I'd probably put maybe half a tablespoon of salt and maybe a quarter tablespoon of pepper. But you know, I just put TT for two tastes. Yeah, whatever you like. Is that it?
Yes, that's
Okay.
it for now. But if you
Okay.
have more questions, put them in the chat and we'll send them your way.
Okay, so I've got all the ingredients blended together here. I've got our mayonnaise, so I'm going to put that into the mixing bowl. Then we're just going to whisk everything together. I'll pour this over the top. I'm going to add a little bit more of the Parmesan cheese to make it a little bit chunky. I'm going to save just a touch of the cheese to garnish the salad, okay? Let me whisk that together. And I'm just going to season it with a little bit of salt and pepper. And there's your dressing. It's really, really simple. Kind of a play on a classic, but it gives it that good cilantro flavor. And like I said, by far our most popular. You put serve this with a chicken breast on top of your salad. It's delicious. Okay, I'll show you what that looks like. Now we're going to use, and classically, of course, you would use garlic croutons for your salad. What we do is we put a little bit of, these are tomato flour tortillas. So we just kind of chop them up and deep fry them to give it a nice crunch to the salad, just like you would find in a classic Caesar salad. So I'm going to take a little bit of the dressing and we'll toss this salad. Then you could put some cracked black pepper on top of that. It's really, really good. Another classic way of serving. And then I'll add the crispy tortillas. Now these are pretty much readily available in any supermarket. They also have like some chipotle flavored ones, or you could even use just regular corn tortillas if you just want to fry them up. I'm going to take the rest of this Parmesan cheese, just kind of crumble that over the top. There you go. cilantro Caesar salad. Really simple. So that's something that kind of a play on a classic. If you really wanted to try a classic Caesar, of course, you could do that. And if you wanted to just make a regular Caesar without the cilantro, you could use that same recipe. Just take out the cilantro, and you would have a basic Caesar dressing without the anchovies. So you could make it work a couple ways. So that's a good thing. So our pork is boiling, right? And this is starting to tenderize. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. And we're going to start working on the sauce for this, okay? Now, remember, I'm pulling a lot of flavor out of the pork and the chicken broth that we have going on here. And so that's going to be the base of our sauce. I want to use this broth for flavoring our sauce as well, just to get all the flavor of the pork. Okay. So on your recipe, if you're following along, the recipe calls for tomatillos, onions, bell pepper, jalapeno, garlic, and cilantro. I have all of those vegetables already cut and prepared, ready to go in this bag. But you would just have to chop everything up, and then we would saute it all together. Now, this is another recipe that, spice-wise, I mean, you could do it as spicy as you want. There's a lot of different styles of doing it, like New Mexico style, for example. It's the hotter the better, right? Especially during hatch chili season, when those chilies are around. It's like as hot as you can make it, that's the way to do it. And usually, they won't add anything else but chili. So, but I'm going to add a lot of other vegetables. And I'm only adding one jalapeno to this recipe just because I want to keep it neutral. I don't want it too spicy, so that anybody who wants to order it that might have an aversion to spice, they can handle it. So I'm going to start these vegetables cooking. And if you wanted to, you could do it another way. Some people boil the vegetables just to soften them up. I like to saute them just because I want the onions and the vegetables to caramelize a little bit, sweeten them up. Or you could grill them. That'll change the flavor profile a little bit. Just not with the cilantro, but you would have to add the cilantro afterwards. But you could definitely grill all these vegetables and change it a little bit. And then, like I said, you could definitely add more chili to spice it up. Do you have any questions, Michelle? No?
Yes, I do have a question. So with the chile verde, can you change the type of meat? And
Yeah.
does that affect
No.
anything?
This same exact recipe, you could make it with chicken, like chicken thighs. You could even use bone-in chicken thighs or legs. It's really, really good. The leaner ones, the breasts or the white meat might dry out a little bit, but you could definitely use some dark meat. It would be really, really good. And I do that a lot. It would actually cook a lot quicker if you're using boneless thighs or boneless legs. It cooks really, really quick. But yeah, you could definitely do it.
Also have another question. Is there a way to make this vegetarian?
Is there what?
A way to make this vegetarian?
Make it vegetarian. Let's see. I would say if you're going to make it vegetarian, I would use something that would definitely hold up to the sauce. You would probably want to make the sauce separately. And if you're going to use like a tofu, excuse me, like a tofu or maybe a quinoa or something, if you can make the sauce and put it over that product, that would work. Yeah, definitely. Or now there's so many of those plant-based meats available, whether it's Impossible or the other products out there. You could definitely do that as well. Sure. Huh? Jackfruit's a big vegan vegetarian substitute nowadays because if you've never seen it, it's a big old piece of fruit that has the little seedlings inside. And when you cook it down, it kind of shreds like a meat. So it has a little bit of sweetness to it, but it adapts to the flavor that you're working with. So if you boil it into this sauce, it would really, really taste like meat. And a lot of people are using that as a substitute for like pulled pork, and they use it in barbecue and all of that stuff. So yeah, you can definitely do that. So I'm just going to cook these vegetables down. I want them to soften up and get the flavors working.
And one other thing was, is that the same for chickpeas? Chickpeas?
Chickpeas?
Mhm. Yes.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, you could do that for sure. Chickpeas have a really nice bite to them, and yeah, they'll hold up really well. That would be good. And then you could use like a vegetable broth to flavor it. That would be great. All right. I hope some people are cooking along, because it's smelling good in here. Okay. I'm gonna check the meat real quick. And you see, these are like in 1-inch squares. So, and it also, the timing will depend on how big you cut it or how small you cut it. If you want it to be really meaty, you could cut it into bigger chunks and just boil it a little bit longer. And it looks kind of cool when you do it that big. All right. If you are cooking along, you're already enjoying your salsa and your salad, so you're ahead of the game. Okay, so these vegetables are just about ready. Now remember, I want to use this stock because this has some flavor in it. So that's going to be the base of our sauce. And that's going to make the sauce with the cooked vegetables. So I'm going to take our vegetables and, can you see this? And we'll put that into the blender. And then we're going to blend it with that broth, okay? And you'll notice that we're getting some of the water coming out of the vegetables, and my mouth is watering right. All right. So now, put some of this stock, and we're going to liquefy it with the vegetables. Remember, we're using the hot liquid in the blender, so just kind of cover it. Make sure it doesn't explode on you. Put about a cup of liquid. Then we're going to combine the two, and we'll let the meat finish cooking in the actual salsa. Okay, and you could actually leave this a little bit chunky if you wanted to, or blend it all the way down, that's fine too. I'm going to put this back into the pot. Then I'll take the pork and I'm going to put that in with the salsa, okay? So I'm not going to use any more stock. I want to see how the consistency is. If you want to, you could add some more stock because it's going to cook down a little bit, okay? So we could add more afterwards. Remember, you could always add more. You can't take out. So if it gets too watery, then you might mess it up. So take a couple more pieces here. Then we're going to let that continue to cook until the meat tenderizes all the way through. Then we'll season it out. We'll check the seasoning. Remember, this stock has some flavor to it. It already has some saltiness to it. So I'm going to check it as it's cooking down. And if we need to salt it a little bit more, we will. If not, we'll be good to go. So I'm just going to stir this up and let that continue to boil. And but we'll bring it to a boil, then turn it down and let it simmer, okay? And I can see already I'm gonna need a little bit more juice. We'll let that reduce. And as it cooks, it's gonna thicken up anyway, so. Plus the tomatillos in this act as a natural thickener, so as it cooks down, it'll thicken up. So that's that. We'll let that continue to cook.
And as you're doing that,
Yes.
so how many people will this feed?
So you're gonna you could feed a good 6 to 8 people with this. The dressing is gonna make you about a quart of dressing. The salsa is also gonna make you about a quart of salsa. So could feed 6, could feed 2, depending on how hungry you are. Okay. So that's going to continue to cook. Then we've got time for dessert. All right, so this dessert, the bread pudding that we're making is now the whole classic bread pudding, of course, is about using staling bread, or so you don't have to waste it before you have to throw it out, basically. So we're going to take bolillos, just to keep with the theme of our restaurant. We use bolillos, which is a Mexican roll, but you could definitely use this recipe with different styles of bread, different types of bread. I've done it before with croissants. I've done it with Danish. If you're going to use Danish, I would back out about half of the sugar that's in the recipe, just because of the sweetness of the Danish. But you could use pretty much any type of bread, as long as it's not like a really strong flavored bread, like a rye or something like that, that will definitely change the flavor. This recipe also, I mean, I use the same recipe for like a brunch type of item, and we substitute the honey for maple syrup. And as you bake it, it tastes just like French toast. So you can play with it and have a lot of fun with it. Okay, so I've got just a disposable half pan. This recipe is written for like a 13x9 Pyrex pan if you have one of those, or you could pick up one of these at Smart and Final. They cost about 50 cents. And then we're going to bake it in a water bath. So you need to have a pan that this pan could fit inside, and we want to fill it about halfway up, 3/4 of the way up with water. So I'm just going to break up this bread. Okay, I'm just going to rip it up roughly, and then we're going to soak it in the custard. Like when you're making custards, the ratio is usually or always a quart of cream or liquid to 8 eggs. So that's what I've got on that recipe. It's a quart of heavy cream. Now, if you wanted to lighten that one up too, you could do that. If you wanted to use milk, you could definitely use milk or a 2% or a non-fat. If you're going to do that, then you'll probably have to add a couple more eggs for the richness. But if you're going to make bread pudding, you might as well go all the way. Use heavy cream.
I think I have a question before you go on, and this is kind of going a little backwards, I guess you could say.
Yes.
So someone's asking, what's the best container to store the salsa or Caesar dressing in?
Okay. To store, basic Tupperware, something plastic is fine. Yeah, I mean, whatever you have is fine.
Okay. And so the second part of their question, just to reiterate, so how long should one keep them in the refrigerator?
I would say maximum a week, but you would have to check it. I mean, for the most part, yeah, the rule of thumb is basically anything no more than a week. So, especially if you got the dairy in it too. But like I said, it's so good, you're going to finish it tomorrow. Okay, so this is boiling really hard. Turn it down just a little bit more. Okay, so I've got the bolillos all broken up. Then I'm going to add, in this recipe, I'm using craisins or dried cranberries. Okay? And a lot of recipes will use raisins. I'm not a huge raisin fan, so I like these better. But this is another recipe you could play with. Like I said, if you wanted to make it a breakfast item, I've done it before with I put broken up cooked sausage into it, and instead of honey, I put the maple syrup. So it was like it's like French toast with sausage all in one. Really, really good. Okay, so I've got all of this ready to go. Now we're going to make the custard, and then we'll put the two together. I need a mixing bowl though. All right. Now, as long as you have the ratio, like I said, a quart to 8 eggs of liquid, you can pretty much play with this recipe however you want. We talked about in the earlier class about making it chocolate, adding chocolate chips or melted chocolate. You could do that. So if you added, a few ounces of melted chocolate, then back out a few ounces of cream, and you'll have the same ratio. So whatever it is you want to flavor it, or if you're going to use like an extract, you put a little bit of extract. An extract, you really don't need that much, whether it's a banana extract or an almond extract or anything like that. You'll probably only need like a couple tablespoons maybe. So it's not really going to affect the ratio that much, but maybe you wouldn't use as much honey or something like that. But it's real simple to play with. Okay, so I'm going to take that's easy for me to say, huh? Okay, so I'm going to take the heavy cream. And then I've got a cup of sugar. So you might as well use the heavy cream. We've got a ton of sugar, we have a ton of eggs, we've got and then half a cup of honey. And this is good, really, really good to serve warm, but it's also good cold. Good in the morning with a cup of coffee, you name it. It's really, really delicious. A little bit of vanilla, some cinnamon, ground cinnamon, and then we're going to add our 8 eggs. Okay.
So the question
Yes.
is there a way to make this lactose free?
Lactose free. You could definitely use lactate if you want to try it like that. I'm sure that would work. Yeah. Okay, then we're just going to whisk that together. Then this will be the base. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to bake it in a 350-degree oven. Like I said, we're going to put it in a water bath. The reason for that is because just like if you were making any custard or like a flan or a creme brulee or anything like that, you want to bake it in a water bath because you want to have it gently baked so that the eggs won't scramble. Okay? So once you put it in the water bath, that water is going to come to a boil at 212 degrees. And it's going to stay like that. So the water surrounding what you're baking is going to stay at 212 degrees, even though the temperature around it is 350. So that's the reasoning for that. But like we talked about earlier, if you wanted to bake it on a lower temperature without the water bath, you could do that. It would just have to take a little bit longer, and I would recommend like maybe 275 degrees. So I'm going to dump all the bread into there. Then what I want to do is let all the bread get soaked through, okay? And a lot of times if you order a bread pudding someplace and you see like the really dried pieces of bread inside, I don't like that. So we're going to play with it, make sure it gets all the way soaked through. And this is a pretty soft bread, so it gets soaked up really, really good. When I do the French toast one, you could even put, I'll get the bread on the bottom really soaked through like this, put that as a base on the bottom, and then get some like some Texas toast, the real thick ones, and cut it diagonally and kind of layer it on the top so it looks like pieces of French toast over the top of it. It's really, really good. Okay. So now we'll put that in the pan. Then just gonna kind of level it out a little bit. And we're gonna cover it. And that'll go in the 350-degree oven, or if you're not using the water bath, I just like the water bath just because it makes it really, really creamy. So it looks really, really nice and tastes really, really smooth. And that would go straight in the oven. So this, I made this one earlier just so you can see what it looks like after it's baked. So that's the finished product. Okay. Now we'll serve one up so you can see what that looks like. Let me check the pork real quick. And this should be getting pretty close because these were cut pretty small. So, and as that reduces, it's going to thicken up.
So while you're doing that,
Yes.
There's a question. Do you put hot water in the water bath?
Yes, you can use cold water, but then it just takes longer to bake. So yes, always put hot water when you're using a water bath. It'll just speed up the baking process and it's that much easier. I'm going to cut out a little piece of this. On the recipe, also, there's a recipe for caramel sauce. And I believe it's the Jack Daniel's caramel sauce that I put on there. So you could make that from scratch. You don't have to use the Jack Daniel's if you don't want to have alcohol in your sauce, and you'll have a straight caramel sauce. You use the same exact recipe, just without the Jack Daniel's, and you'll have a straight caramel sauce. I'm just going to use a store-bought caramel sauce for this demonstration, but and then we talked a little bit about flambeing, because if you're using alcohol, of course, it's going to flame. So just be careful when you're doing that. When you're adding the alcohol, kind of tilt your pan forward a little bit, and the flame will catch on the outside. Then you can tilt it back and it'll go straight up. So, and then it'll die down as the alcohol evaporates.
So also for cooking the bread pudding, did you take the top off for a certain amount of time when you're cooking?
Usually I don't, but when I'll check it, and if it looks like a little bit light, because usually it'll brown pretty good, just like that. Once you take the top off, after you want to check it, if it's a little light on the top, and but it's done, then I would just throw it back in the oven without the top and let it brown just a little bit, maybe a couple more minutes. Yeah. So there's your bread pudding. Yeah, four spoon.
And when you do that, are there any, should you turn down the heat at that point when you take the top off if you wanted to?
No, you don't have to turn down the heat. You just got to keep an eye on it. Don't walk away, because you just want it to brown a little bit. And if you walk away for 10 minutes, it might get a little bit too dark. So But yeah, just keep an eye on it and you should be fine.
And also another question was
Yes.
if you wanted to make individual bread pudding served in ramekins, would you do something different?
No, you would just take that recipe and then once you mix it all together in the mixing bowl, just kind of divide it into your ramekins. They'll probably cook a lot quicker, so you just got to keep an eye on them. But yeah, they'll definitely cook a lot quicker depending on how big or small your ramekin is. But yeah, you could definitely do those individually for sure. Those are really, really nice to do too, because they're really nice to look at. Okay. So we've got your salsa, we got your salad. Now we just plate up our dinner, and you guys will be all set. If you are cooking along, your Chile Benedict should be just about there. Yeah, this is pretty tender. All right. So I'm going to show you just, we're going to plate it up with a little bit of beans and rice, okay? So you can see. And one of the questions I got earlier was about the beans. We use lard or oil, right? We're old school. We use lard to give it that flavor. And I think using lard, it just gives it a lot more flavor. So if you want to do it the classic way, use lard. If you want to lighten it up, you could use lard, sure. Okay. So take some of the Chile Verde. And this is going to make, like I said, you could serve a good 6 to 8 people with this, easy. I'm just going to put some in a ramekin so you can see what it looks like. I mean, in a molcajete. There's your Chile Verde, beans and rice. You got salsa, the cilantro Caesar salad, and bread pudding. Real simple. Questions?
So I do have a couple questions here.
Yes.
So assuming that there's leftovers, what is the best way to reheat the bread pudding?
Well, you can just reheat it in the microwave. That's fine. Yeah. Or if you are going to put it in the oven, I would put it in aluminum tray or something like that and cover it so it doesn't get too brown. But yeah, you could just start in the microwave for a minute. It's fine.
All right. And also, how would you kind of make this recipe larger? Like if you needed to feed more people?
Any one of these?
Well, mainly the Chile Verde.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you could just, based on math, either double it or do it 1.5 times but you're using in the recipe, I think it's 4 pounds of meat. So as it cooks down, you're going to end up with about 3 to 3.5 pounds. So you could judge it that way. And, I usually figure about 6 to 8 ounces per person. So.
All right. So another question about the bread pudding.
Okay.
So when the bread pudding is done, does a tester come out clean?
Yeah. But what you'll notice too, if you make it more than once, as it cooks, and if you wanted to check it, the top will rise evenly, and once it rises evenly, then it's cooked all the way through. If it's still concave a little bit, that means that there might be a little bit of moisture still in the middle. So, but yeah, if you wanted to stick a toothpick or a knife in the middle of it, it'll come out dry. What else? Ask me some more questions. But if you're ever in Pico Rivera, of course, come to the restaurant. You could come and see some of these things in action daily. We've got all of these things actually on the menu daily. So you're welcome to come to the restaurant right now as a promotion, I guess you could call it, for all the people that supported us throughout the whole COVID thing throughout the year. I'm doing a promotion to become a member. We're calling it Club 99. So you become a member for $99.99, and then you could come to eat at the restaurant over a period of 99 days for 99 cents. So 99 cents for 99 days, any meal that you have at the restaurant. So you become a member. Yes, it's really, really good. Really good deal.
That is awesome. So we have quite a few questions came in right now.
Okay.
To cut the recipe or cut down the recipe, do you divide the portions in half?
Yes. If you were just going to cut it in half, you could just do it directly in half. No problem.
Also, what type of oil do you use for your tortilla chips?
We use soybean oil.
Alrighty. And then can you share again what the name of your restaurant is?
The name of the restaurant is called the Zapien Salsa Grill. It's in Pico Rivera. We're located at 6702 Rosemead Boulevard.
Awesome. And also about the bread pudding, can you make it with gluten-free bread?
Ooh, good question. You could try. Yeah, I'm sure it'll work. I'm thinking it might disintegrate, but you might have to use a little bit more of the bread because, but yeah, I'm sure you can do it.
It'd soak longer too.
I don't think it would have to soak longer. I think it'll probably have to soak less.
All right. Well, thank you. So there was a comment that says everything looks delicious. So
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I hope some of you were making it at home. Because if you did, it's dinner time, right?
It is about that time. Also, can you freeze the bread pudding for later use?
Never have. We could definitely try it. I have frozen dairy before, so it might work. Yeah. I've never tried it though. It's so good you won't have to. Don't worry.
All righty. So if there are any other questions, put them in the chat and we can get those answered for you. But if not, I do want to thank everyone for joining us today. And if you are interested in more virtual programs, please look at our virtual program weekly e-newsletter. And that's going to be on our virtual programming page on our website, which is lacountylibrary.org. And for the latest library news and events, please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at LA County Library. So with that, that's all we have for today, I believe. So stay safe and have a wonderful day. And I will switch it on over so you can say some last words if you'd like.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you all for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it. Definitely try the recipes. Come by the restaurant anytime. We'd be happy to have you. And if you have any questions or anything, you can definitely email me through our website at www.thesalsagrill.com. And feel free to come by anytime. Thank you again for having me.